Hello everyone, welcome to the Share Your Green Design podcast. Before we begin today's episode, just a reminder that you can follow and subscribe to us over on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also find the full video version of each episode over on YouTube. We're also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and WeChat at Share Your Green Design. That's all one word, Share Your Green Design. And remember, the podcast is only one small part of what is an ever-growing platform. So head on over to shareyourgreendesign.com to keep up to date with the latest in sustainable architecture, engineering, and construction. We've got projects, news, research, events, competitions, student work, jobs, everything you need. We'd love to have you as a visitor, but also as a contributor, so you're always welcome to send us your own projects, ideas, events, job openings, and much more. You'll find all the details on shareyourgreendesign.com. Once again, that's shareyourgreendesign.com. Thank you again for your support, and with that, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. So yeah, to get into it, as I was saying, could you just maybe give a brief introduction into yourself, where you are in the world, and what you're up to these days?
Okay, so I'm Sam Stacey, and I'm Challenge Director for the Transforming Construction Challenge. It's part of the UK's industrial strategy. It was launched by Greg Clark, who was Secretary of State in those days, 2017. And it's really about transforming the construction sector for the better. And there is enormous potential to do that. I'm 4 years into 4.5-year programme and really starting to see some great results from that. Transforming construction, about making the construction industry better and solving these environmental challenges we've got, and all sorts of things.
Awesome. It's kind of appropriate to your background as well, because your background is in engineering, isn't it?
I'm honestly, I can say that I was enthusiastic about making buildings from early childhood. I mean, I was just fascinated with everything to do with building. So it's really in the blood. And the question, the thing I encountered is like, do I go into engineering or do I go into architecture? So my first degree, I went into architecture, and I did feel that didn't kind of complete the picture. So I took myself back to university and went through a whole engineering degree. And gradually I've sort of filled out this picture with regards to getting an understanding of the built environment and the industry as a big system. And I think that's what's so important. I think that's the approach people need to take in order to get it functioning right. And that's what's been so exciting about the role that I've had for the last few years. Really getting my hands on the levers of change and being able to sort of address all aspects of how we fix this frankly broken system that, it's been said, isn't working for anybody.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting that you come from this kind of architecture plus engineering background, because I think a lot of people would agree that the industry would definitely be served better if more people had that kind of that almost kind of dual education in architecture and engineering. Because I know myself from an architecture background, an architecture degree by itself is so long. And it's so drawn out to become a registered architect that the thought of then inferring more education onto yourself as an engineer is never really appetizing. But I'm interested in how engaging in both of those spheres has kind of shaped where you are now, because I mean, one reading on it might be that the background in architecture, and architects tend to be able to kind of take a step back a lot and kind of infuse a lot of different elements together. It's kind of part of our role. That's kind of shone through in the kind of innovation angle maybe to your career, and then I guess the engineering has given you more of a firm footing, more of a and more confidence in what is and isn't possible. And it's almost the two of those merged together is where you kind of find yourself now.
For me, I found it really interesting and really important to get this broad understanding of the system. I'm a rare animal in the sense that there aren't many people who are prepared to slog through that many years at university, that many years of training, and quite frankly, all the while watching contemporaries who've gone into other lines of business, particularly finance, particularly management consulting, things like that. And they're on a different trajectory. It's you get the rewards sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So now having done many years of this stuff, I feel I can really make a difference, and that is fantastic. That is a fantastic position to be in, and very, very fulfilling. But I think that one of the things is I hope we can change the system in such a way that there is a more accelerated path for people who want to steer the industry and the built environment from a more strategic perspective. So I've done the traditional thing in terms of learning how to be an architect, learning how to be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, learning how businesses work from the point of view of my MBA.
Mm-hmm.
But I think going through all that, I've trodden this path, but I wouldn't necessarily want lots of other people to have to tread that same path, because it's there's quite a lot of slog to it.
Yeah. And one of those maybe accelerated paths into innovation is kind of what you touched on at the beginning of this, which is Innovate UK, which is your main, I guess you could say, your main preoccupation at the moment, or your main engagement with Innovate UK and the Transforming Construction Challenge.
Yeah, so I always massively enthusiastic about buildings and making them beautiful and making them better, and that kind of took me into thinking, so how does change really work? How do we get things to be done differently? And this is the sort of the big headline topic of innovation. So I became kind of a specialist in innovation, I don't know, probably from about 2008 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And starting to get in touch with these networks of people who've got better solutions for the built environment. I started working with Innovate UK as a bidder for grant money in 2010. So really starting to understand the system of support, the ecosystem that supports innovation. And there's some fantastic stuff out there. It's just a question of bringing it together, connecting the dots, and removing the barriers to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And applying innovation in construction is possibly harder than many areas, because you've got this fragmented industry. You've got this industry where you've got clients and designers and main contractors and subcontractors, and they've all got these different agendas, and somehow you've got to join all that up. And with the Transforming Construction program, we've had a chance to do that. We've had a chance to address the innovation requirements in all those categories and show how it all works together.
Mm-hmm. And to give people a background into the Transforming Construction Challenge itself, I guess on a high level, it came from this massive investment in research funding from the UK government. You can stop me if I get this wrong, but it was I think I read it was like 170 million in research money, which was matched with 250 million, I think, in government money, or in
That's right, yeah.
And
no, so 170 million of government money.
Yeah.
The industry committed to match that with 250 million of their own money. Mm-hmm. And that's a lovely pot to pay with. Yeah. That enables you to do some really substantial stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, incidentally, what we've experienced with the industry contribution is we're probably, I think the measures are, we're probably in about 300 million so far in terms of industry contribution to this. But now that we've got that flywheel moving and it's kind of joined up, we're going to see that keep on coming. So, if we talk to a lot of different companies, and on the basis of their projections, they're probably going to have invested about $1 billion all up by 2027. Wow. So, really getting this momentum through the industry.
Mm-hmm. And they just as well, this in terms of precedent for this level of investment in construction, and particularly in innovation in construction, It must be unparalleled in the UK context, surely. Have we ever seen this this scale of investment or this push for innovation in construction like we have seen through this mechanism?
Nothing like it at all is the
Yeah,
simple answer.
yeah.
There has been some investment, and I'm a great champion for what the UK government has done right in the past. But in terms of the scale of investment, we've not seen anything like this in the construction sector. Just to give credit where it's due, the government has wanted to be supportive of improvements in the industry, and has had policies that are quite conducive to this, so particularly around the digital side of construction.
Hmm.
But in terms of really turbocharging it, yeah, this is where we're at now, and this is a new thing.
Hmm. So where are we at the moment then with the challenge? I'm right in saying that you've received a lot of ideas already from different sectors. So where would you say the challenge is at the moment, and what kind of stage is it at?
So we're 80 or 90% of the way through it. So the sequence of events there is look at what needs to change. Look at where we need solutions to do things better. Set up projects and collaborations to test out these solutions,
Hmm.
and then get the findings and the demonstrations, the proof of these things out there for all to see and all to pick up on.
Hmm.
So we're now in a situation where we've got this tremendous portfolio of proof of concept, often a really quite a big scale. So we've published so far 85 case stories, we call them,
Hmm.
explaining what we've done for different sectors, different parts of the design and construction process, different types of buildings. So there's all that, but then within the program, there is two really big centres that we funded. So we funded the Construction Innovation Hub, which is all about guiding clients towards value in terms of their assets. So the value toolkit is one of the key outputs there.
Hmm.
Uh, the product platform approach to construction. So the platform rulebook has just been published by the Construction Innovation Hub.
Hmm.
And then digital guidance for what needs to be done in terms of digital modelling of projects. So that's Construction Innovation Hub. That's a big program. 70 million of the investment has gone to Construction Innovation Hub, and we're seeing a lot of outputs from that, and we'll continue to see more outputs from that between now and the end of September.
Hmm.
And then the other big program is the Active Building Centre. So that's all about the decarbonisation thing.
Yeah.
And the Active Building Centre has got solutions for the capture, storage, and control of clean energy for buildings. And again, they've been testing and validating their solutions, and now it's all starting to come out very much in public and sharing that information and giving people practical tools that they can use to decarbonise their principally new buildings, but also very much applicable to the retrofit side of things.
Have there been any? I imagine that there's like a wave of exciting ideas that have come from this. Has there been any that have really kind of make you sit up or really get you excited? Like, for example, I've seen references to like digital twins in some of the output, which I think is becoming. I know particularly in an American context as well. More and more cities looking at the idea of building, like Las Vegas, I think, is trying to build a digital twin gradually of the city. Have there been any kind of particular ideas that have really got you kind of excited about about what we might see in the future?
Well, I think it is a system thing, and there are lots of aspects to that. But in terms of just an unexpected thing that I think is great, it's this project called Hyperpile.
Hmm.
So typically you've got big lumps of concrete bored into the ground as piles. Dumb, huge amount of embodied carbon. So one of the things we sponsored is this Hyperpile project where you've got hollow precast piles with fiber optic sensors in them, so you know exactly what's happening in terms of movement and strength of these piles. The fact that they're precast enables them to be installed much more easily, and they're hollow, so you can use that hollow core of the piles to exchange heat from the ground. So piling suddenly turns into this sort of intelligent part of the building system, which contributes to the sustainability of the building, lowers the cost of making the building, and you know suddenly you've kind of brought this alive. What was previously a sort of dead element of the building, as it were, into something that can really contribute to the whole life of the building in an active way.
Awesome. The kind of impossible question then, how when might we see some of these ideas which are being developed at the moment kind of enter the market and be used on live projects? Like, are we talking about like months or years or decades, or does it kind of vary on the idea? When might we see some of these cool ideas in action?
Oh, I think we're seeing it. We're seeing it a lot already.
Mm.
You know, in terms of, you know, we've been focusing on getting some demonstrator projects out there, demonstrator examples. We've got this AIM-CH project, Advanced Industrial Methods for the Construction of Homes, led by Barratt and L&Q, the social housing provider. So we're seeing houses being built now using our systems. We've worked with Landsec and various others on a big office block demonstration called The Forge in South London.
Mm-hmm.
So again, using these techniques there's really a lot out there already.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the public sector procurement side of things, the DfE is taking up the solutions that we've got. So this kit of parts approach, incorporating the clean solutions into schools. So I think the first school, you know, properly using these techniques will go on site next year.
Wow.
So you know, it's a big industry. The changing the direction of the tanker that is the construction industry takes a little bit of time, but we're starting to see some real big scale proven examples coming through already. And you know what I sort of preach is we're in the process of demonstrating that the traditional way of doing things is obsolete. So once we get to that tipping point, once there's enough evidence and enough confidence out there that there are better ways of doing things, you'd have to be crazy to do it the old way.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the dominoes will fall faster and faster.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good analogy of the construction industry being like this, like massive tanker that you're trying to turn. And you touched on it previously as well about how sometimes it can be challenging, or it can be there's a lot of work involved in trying to innovate in the construction sector. Where do you think that comes from? Because you can look at it a lot of different ways. I mean, I guess one reason might be that it is, you know, our supply chains are incredibly complex. The sheer volume of materials and how they all work together in a building is incredibly complex. It's almost like human anatomy. So
Yeah.
trying to innovate there can be difficult. I know from an architecture point of view, you often hear this line of, you know, clients don't, and this maybe not isn't as much in sustainability and construction, but just in architectural experimentation more broadly, that clients don't like to be used as guinea pigs. They don't want their money and their investment and their assets to be used as guinea pigs for new ideas, which in itself makes it more difficult to innovate and to try new things.
Yeah.
You either need a visionary client, or you probably need something like Innovate UK, like the Transforming Construction Challenge, which people are willing to put up capital to sometimes wait years for results. But what are your thoughts and reflections on just the challenges of trying to innovate in construction versus maybe other sectors, and where that might come from?
Well, I think you do need an approach that gets everybody working together. It's a very fragmented industry, as you've described. So the procurement side is vital. You got to get the clients asking for the right things. And among those things are that you take a value-based approach to what you're doing, that you use standardized platform approaches to the building, and then encouraging the suppliers to work together over the long term. One of the problems with the industry is there was this rush, and I think it's from the 80s really, this rush to sort of think, well, we need to introduce competition at every level, everyone's got to compete financially. Now, there are certain benefits to that, but it fragments everything. It means that you can't get together with the different types of expertise and say, right, how are we going to come up with a really intelligent solution to this problem? Now, what we've been able to do by pumping a little bit of grant money and so on into the system is get these consortia together, get them working on really intelligent solutions, pilot and demonstrate them at a sufficient scale. So as you say, clients don't want to be guinea pigs, as you say, but they do want to be, well, they want to reap the benefits of innovation where they can have confidence in it.
Yeah.
And our whole outlook has been to de-risk these solutions such that people can pick them up and use them at scale with confidence that nothing's going to go wrong. And that's what our portfolio of outputs has produced. It's like, you want housing manufactured more efficiently. We've got examples of that. You want offices more efficiently. We got examples of that. You want clean energy solutions. We got examples of that. Transport sector stuff, footbridges, cooling panels for tube stations. We've got worked examples in all these areas. And because we're so joined up with the government has really been using its levers to create the right kind of change. So really significant was the publication of the construction playbook, December 2020. So that drives all the right behaviours from the supply chain. And I do realise, I do acknowledge that this is a work in progress. There is a requirement to invest in digital skills, invest in factory production, but it's a virtuous circle. The more you do it, the more you get the economies of scale, the more you get confidence in these things. So as I say, there's real momentum to this change process, I believe.
Awesome. To take a step back in time, then, before you became involved with Innovate UK, you were at Skanska. That's correct.
Yeah.
So you were there. I think I got this right. Director of Innovation, Industrialisation, and Business Improvement.
Yeah, they kept tacking on more things. Oh, you can do this, and design management, and this and that and the other. But fundamentally, director of innovation. So that was about 8 years. I was at Skanska 2010 to 2018, and that was that was a lovely experience. Really, it was a question. I'd started to think we really need some fundamental changes in the industry. And while I was at Skanska, I was able to work on investigating a lot of the solutions, a lot of the pieces of this jigsaw, often with Innovate UK support, because we bid for money from Innovate UK. If I call it the frustrating side of that, was the realization that even Skanska, quite a big player in the industry, a very big player in the industry, a lot of respect, a lot of clout, couldn't really change the system by itself. So that's why it's been such a great revelation to move into the role that I'm in now, where I'm in touch with the procurers, particularly government procurers. I'm in touch with the designers. I'm in touch with the clever SMEs that have got solutions, and I can join all this up. Even a great organisation like Skanska can't do it unilaterally.
There's a really interesting parallel here, because for people who don't know Skanska, it's one of the world's largest construction companies, and I think it was the second episode of this podcast we had Stacey Smedley, who also worked in Skanska, but she was kind of on the North American side, and it's a very similar trajectory, or almost a very similar enlightenment between what she went through and what you went through. Where she when she left Skanska, it was to go into developing software and coding. So she found this kind of intersection where you could develop one product or one thing which would intersect with a lot of different lines in the construction sector. So designers, software developers, building owners, occupiers,
Yeah.
etc. And it sounds as though you've kind of done the same thing, where you've moved from this big player on one track, and you've found this other role which might not be on the same scale, like same kind of global scale as Skanska, but it's kind of strategically placed where it just intersects with a lot of different parts of the industry. So government, research, academic, and industry as well. It's kind of interesting how the kind of parallel there.
Yes, I mean, I think that as one moves through this, one starts to see what the really interesting interventions are into the system. As you say, in some ways, what I'm doing now is more targeted. Skanska is a global organisation, but in my current role, I've been able to put the system together, at least for the UK. And it's a very interesting question for myself and many others. What happens next? And I've got some quite specific ideas of where I think the innovation needs to happen going forward, because there is a reluctance, and not necessarily a logical, rational reluctance amongst the incumbents in the industry to change.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think for the next phase, we need strategists who will help certain businesses scale disruptive innovation in the sector. And I would say that falls into four categories. So I'd say that falls into manufacturers who either already doing off-site fabrication for construction, or could move into providing off-site fabricated solutions for construction.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses working with information systems. So this is a sort of digital twin thing, tracking everything that's happening, providing good information for decision making throughout the construction process. Essentially, what I would, as an analogy, I'd say organizations that are providing sat navs for construction projects and programs.
Mm-hmm.
Decarbonisation solutions, obviously huge opportunities and need to apply decarbonisation solutions for the industry. And then finally, ways for organisations to buy and sell solutions. So if you're a client, you need, I think, an online marketplace to go to find your new world construction solutions, your platform solutions and so forth. And if you're a supplier of building components or assemblies, then you need somewhere to reliably access your buyers. So I hope there'll be a flourishing of online marketplaces for new construction solutions.
Mm-hmm. In some way, it's the four you mentioned there. In some ways, it's innovative, and it's disruptive. And I guess there's another way of looking at it, which is that buildings intersect with every aspect of life, every aspect of society. That those four you mentioned, manufacturing, finance, intelligence, etc., are these are aspects which arguably we should always have been thinking about in buildings. And I guess that now our challenge, and the challenge that people like you are taking up, is surveying the landscape today, and especially surveying the kind of technological landscape today, and seeing, okay, what is it's almost like kind of first principles. It's like how are we doing each step of this? How are we producing energy in buildings? How are we wasting energy in buildings? How are we constructing buildings? And just, it's almost like a reevaluation of, at every step, what are the tools or techniques available today from different parts of society that maybe we wouldn't have looked at before, which could help us where, as you say, maybe the traditional way of doing things not only maybe isn't helping, but is maybe actually counterproductive to what to our climate goals and even to social or economic goals that we have today.
I think that's absolutely right. And on the one hand, the industry's been locked into low profit margins and all sorts of drawbacks. And yet, if you look at the key categories, labour, energy, and materials, we can massively reduce the costs and the wastage in all those categories. And that's where my advice for companies and public sector organisations is to stand back and say, okay, what are we going to do to massively reduce the energy demand of our buildings, massively reduce the amount of labour that needs to go into making our buildings, and you won't get such massive reductions, but significantly reduce the amount of materials we need to make our buildings. And just on the material side, that's a matter of over design and waste. For every £1 million we spend on buildings, typically we throw away 100 skips. 100 skips
Whoa.
of stuff leave site. I mean, that's crazy. And then combined with that, you've got the over design. Engineers, because most buildings are treated as prototypes effectively, they haven't got time to really hone things down and be really efficient in the way that they use materials. So, my general sense is that we could take about 25% of the volume of material out of the equation and still get buildings that are at least as good, frankly better than what we get today.
Speaking of kind of efficiency on construction sites, I really wanted to ask you about flying factories, because whoever came up with the name flying factories deserves a raise. But
a shout out for Craig White. Craig White came up with that.
Was this from
that term?
Was this from Skanska, by the way, or was that an existing idea that you guys just took on?
I'll tell you exactly what happened there. Skanska had done a little bit of work with Craig White, making some schools, or even quite small extensions to schools. But he had this concept of flying factories to put together parts of the building, and I came across it. I thought, this is fantastic. This has got huge potential. I got together some other partners to scale this solution. I got Innovate UK involved, and we did it at a much bigger scale. And the aim there really is to say, okay, we all know that under the right circumstances, making things in factories is much more efficient. But what everybody's scared of is the investment in factory space and overhead and so forth. So how do we overcome that barrier? If we do it on the basis of renting a factory or setting up a factory for a specific project or program, then we're not locked into long-term overhead burdens. We can create stuff in a factory environment, we can do it nice and efficiently, and then at the end of the project we can walk away and we're not locked into any financial commitments, and it works great. And I'll be honest, I think that it's still a very underexploited opportunity. We did it for a few hundred apartments at Skanska. We did it for a big road project where you had lots of overbridges and so forth. There'll be a number of other examples, but I think it's one of the techniques that the industry would do well to adopt more widely.
I think it's an awesome idea, because what I particularly like about it is that I think we can generalize sometimes and assume that the only best future for fabrication of construction elements is kind of off-site prefabricated modularized architecture, which in some cases it is, and probably in a lot of cases it is. But what I like about the flying factories idea, it speaks to this idea of almost for each project, just having this toolkit of options and saying what is the best, same as what is the best design solution for this site,
Yeah.
what is the best fabrication solution, or what is the best kind of construction solution for this site? Is it a kind of mass produced prefabricated element which is transported to site, or is it this kind of on-site flying factory approach where the factory comes to you, or is it a combination of both? But there's also something kind of timeless about it, because you would imagine that historically, maybe even before the industrial era, that's probably how most buildings were constructed. A lot of the processes and because presumably before say rail travel or whatever, when we had this kind of access to like this international market, it probably did mostly depend on local materials, local labor, and also just local manufacturing infrastructure to build. And it's almost like a kind of a new age return to that, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. A lot of what we're doing now has been tried before. People realise that offsite fabrication or factory approaches and been around for frankly thousands of years. I'm sure there are Roman examples, there are probably Egyptian examples of these things. Two fundamental things have changed, I guess. Our information systems and the emergence of digital enables us to be much more comprehensive with the way that we address industrialized process. And let's not forget that our expectations of buildings have increased significantly. We've got some lovely buildings from thousands of years old, but they're very simple buildings in terms of their functionality. Now we expect buildings to be environmentally friendly in terms of, provide a very comfortable environment to live in without using too much energy and all these sorts of things. So our expectations have gone up, and we have to respond with technical solutions to those expectations.
Mm-hmm. To kind of bring everything full circle, then. So I mean, you're somebody who has had almost a front row seat and a really deep engagement for a lot of really cool and a lot of really inspirational, innovative ideas for where the construction industry is going. What advice would you have for people who are interested in this kind of innovative road, who feel like they have something to offer, and who maybe are stuck? I don't want to say stuck, but who are currently in a more kind of traditional role that they're wanting to kind of break out of. I know you said you don't necessarily have to do architecture and then do engineering. That's not the route you have to go down. But any kind of simple bits of advice for whether it's particular ideas which you got inspiration from, or different interesting approaches to ideas that you came across. What advice would you give people who want to further their own skills?
I think you can learn very quickly about these new techniques, the platform approaches, the value approach, the sustainable approaches to buildings. You can learn very quickly from these. And our program, the program that I've been running, has been very much to say, okay, so what's missing there? What do we need to address? And now you can, and all the more so over the next few months, you'll be able to go to the Construction Innovation Hub website and just pick those tools off the shelf and start applying them in a way that's suitable. So Construction Innovation Hub as a source of information, Active Building Centre as a source of information, and Transforming Construction case stories as a source of information. So that the information's there. We've done the donkey work, to develop and de-risk these things, and people can pick them up and apply them nice and quickly, I think. Awesome. And it's all that's going to happen within an environment which is really conducive. On the one hand, we've got the playbook, which I mentioned already. We've also got this imperative to decarbonise our built environment. So there is on the one hand, there's this massive demand side pull for these solutions, and on the other hand, we've done our best to say, okay, so this is how you respond to that market pull.
Mm-hmm. So from what you've seen yourself, and then from what you've been engaged in yourself, and then from what you've seen in the broader industry, would you say you're optimistic and hopeful, or are you pessimistic about us tackling climate change in the built environment in the future?
I'm absolutely optimistic. I think I have no doubt that the solutions are there. And what I mean by that is, with limited inconvenience, and I wouldn't even say economic pain, because we don't, the business cases for all this stuff more or less stack up today, and are increasingly going to stack up in the future. So we can do it. We've got to be bold. We've got to stick to our guns. We mustn't listen to these, climate change denier troll types who are sort of saying, oh, it's all going to be expensive and we don't need to do it anyway, kind of thing. Hold out against that. You can do it. We've got the solutions. We need to do it. I'm absolutely optimistic that it'll happen. And before long, I think we're going to get to a position where any remaining barriers that people throw up and kind of fears that people put out there will have been disproved. So, I think we're cresting that hill such that it's going to kind of have its own momentum. Yes, we can do it. Don't listen to the doom mongers. I was tempted to say don't listen to the skeptics, but always you've got to listen to So what are the practical problems? You can't bury your head in the sand and ignore that. There are things that need to be considered. Risks and business cases and so forth all need to be considered, but we can consider them and find ways to address those issues.
Yeah, just listen to this podcast, folks. Everything will be okay. That's all you need to. That's all you need to listen to. Awesome, Sam. For people then who want to reach you or find out more about you and pitch their brilliant ideas to you, how can they get in touch, and how can they follow what you're doing?
So I'm not a great social media user, but LinkedIn would be the way. And as I say, I encourage people to look at the online resources associated with transforming construction.
Awesome. Brilliant. Sam, really appreciate taking the time. It was fascinating to talk to you. Thanks a million.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
That's all from us for now. So thank you for tuning into this episode of the Share Your Green Design podcast. Just a reminder before you go, you can subscribe to us over on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Or if you prefer watching the conversation, you can find us on YouTube. You can follow us over on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and WeChat at Share Your Green Design. That's all one word, Share Your Green Design. And remember, the podcast is only one small part of a much larger platform dedicated to sustainable architecture, engineering, and construction. To keep up to date with the latest projects, news, research, events, competitions, student work and job adverts, head on over to shareyourgreendesign.com. Thank you everyone for your support, and we'll see you next time.